Welcome to the Reclaim Your Health podcast. So, for those of you who are not new, you may recognize that there has been a name change to the show. After having the show for a year, about a year, a little bit more now, I wanted to reach more people and get specific about who this show is actually for. So, with that, I had to change the name so that you all can find me. But before I get into more of the why with that, I have two announcements. Well, I'll share one now and then one at the end. So make sure you listen through. But the first one is that we're going to be doing weekly episodes this year. They're going to drop every Wednesday wherever you listen to podcasts. So you can definitely have that to look forward to. Okay, so back to the renaming of the show, Reclaim Your Health, and talking about thriving with chronic illness. I wanted to zone in on these people because chronic illness and just living with it or experiencing it or watching it, those people are just very close to my heart, near and dear to me. One, because I myself have experienced multiple chronic illnesses, whether it's asthma or I've talked about having anxiety disorder before. And I've even had like chronic migraines. But then also, I was a child that grew up with a parent with a chronic condition, multiple sclerosis. My mom has that. So I've experienced it personally in different ways. And then the other reason why it's close to my heart is because so many people have a chronic condition. In the US alone, 6 out of 10 Americans have at least one chronic condition. That's more than half of the population in the US. So, with that big of a number, I'm like, there is obviously a need for us to talk about health and wellness and our illnesses and how that affects our life. And I wanted to join that conversation with it. So, that's a little bit more of why I wanted to hone in on that. And let's also kind of explain what a chronic condition is. I've listed a few, anxiety, asthma, chronic migraines, multiple sclerosis. They're all so different, right? And that's just the nature of chronic illness. It is it's truly a broad term, but basically, it's a condition or an illness that you've had for an extended period of time. So, at least 12 weeks or about 3 months or so. So, if you have anything like that, a condition that has lasted that extended period of time, you fall under the realm of chronic illness. And it doesn't, even in the examples that I've listed with like anxiety, mental illness can be considered a chronic condition as well. It doesn't just have to be something like physical, like asthma or multiple sclerosis either. So, I mean, it varies. Diabetes is one, Crohn's disease is another one, psoriasis is another one. So, I'm excited because we're going to shed light on so many different illnesses this year. It's going to be impossible for me to list all of them, but I will do my best to raise awareness to different illnesses as best I can with your help. So, we're going to cover a lot. But basically, I wanted to talk about that. When you discover you have a chronic illness, maybe you're noticing symptoms, maybe you haven't been officially diagnosed, and you don't have to be officially diagnosed to have a chronic illness. But when you come to terms or realize that you have one way or another, it usually has been affecting your quality of life. And in some cases, or sometimes it feels like it has quite literally taken over your life, and you may feel out of control. I know I have felt that way, especially with my anxiety or with my chronic migraines when I was having that, for sure. And I want to step in here to help people that are going through this or coming out of feeling like it's taken over, whichever space you're in. Remember and help you recognize that you do still have a say and that you can reclaim your health from a condition. And not only can you reclaim your health, you can still thrive in life, even will though you have multiple conditions or one condition, it is still quite possible. So I just wanted to add support where I can here. So let's get more into detail about what we're going to talk about today. I know it's still the new year time, and a lot of us use this time of year to just set new health goals. So let's talk about setting yourself up for success when it comes to building new habits. And plus, this will be a great episode to reference in the future. Once it's been some weeks or some months on your goal, you can just check back in to get a refresher on how to set yourself up for some success. And I want to talk about this because sometimes it's exciting and even satisfying to come up with a new goal, and it's we may even take it a step further to not just say the goal, but we've gone ahead and made a plan, right? But then we find ourselves struggling with motivation or focused or actually executing the plan because life happens and car breakdown or kids need things or you have a flare up with your illness, right? So things happen and it throws us off course. And sometimes in our plan, we don't account for that. So we feel completely derailed and it's challenging to get back on track. So that's why I really want to talk about setting ourselves up for success because when we start to waver, not if, or when we find ourselves at a crossroad of figuring out how to still follow the plan or choosing to walk away, what are we going to do? So, my hope is that in hearing this episode, you'll hear something today that will remind you that, you know, with all of these plans, even if it's a new goal, you're not actually starting from ground zero. It might be scary, it might be challenging, it might be something that you've never seen yourself do before, but it really doesn't matter because you have things and tools available to you um, from your life before that can help you get to reach this goal. And we're going to go all into detail about that. And hopefully, you'll see what I'm saying here. And recognizing that you already have some tools that can support you in your new life or new goals that you want to reach is going to help you stay consistent and be committed and find the longevity in figuring out what thriving looks like for you. So let's kind of rewind. I'm going to touch on when I was diagnosed with asthma. So that happened when I was a kid. I've had asthma for as long as I could remember. But one of the things that we had to do was have an asthma action plan in place. We had to be able to say, if this happens, then we do this. If that happens, this is what we do. And so we had to write it out. I had to be aware of it. My parents had to be aware of it. My schools had to be aware of it. So that was the asthma action plan. And I used to find it kind of annoying to review the plan because usually when we would work on it, I wasn't having any issues or challenges with my asthma. I felt fine. I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, it's good. I know what to do. Take my rescue inhaler. But then every now and then I would run into a day where my breathing wasn't so good. And I knew how to address it though, because I was prepared by thinking about what I would do if I had a flare up. I didn't have to think in that moment because I had to think like remember, but I didn't have to create an action plan while I was, struggling with breathing because it was already done for me. I just had to remember it, or we even had it printed out. If I couldn't remember it or if I was with people that weren't familiar, like off the top of their head what to do, they just looked at the actual form that said my action plan. So I was prepared because we took the time to create a plan before I had a flare up. And this was helpful because it allowed me to, not waste time thinking of a plan when I was already in trouble. I just had to remember enough that I had a plan and then act on it. And now, of course, when you're coming up with plans, you can't think of every issue that could possibly come up. And that's okay. I wouldn't ask you to try to do that. That's like impossible. But we can take the time to think of some of our more common or likely issues that could come up. So I know a common issue for people whenever they start setting a goal, we'll go with working out. A lot of people want to get in shape, whether it's gain weight or lose weight this time of year, which is great. or they could just be wanting to be more active, moving their body on a daily basis. So what you could do is think or list out the all the barriers that you could possibly run into that could keep you from moving your body that day. So say I you have this goal of working out 5 days a week. It would be helpful to think of what could get in my way from keeping me working out 5 days a week. Just drawing attention to that. Another common barrier, though, for people, whether it's moving your body, getting fit, or something not related to that as all at all, could be the time. People could say you could have a goal of I want to read more books this year, but it sounds great, and you may have a plan and say, okay, I'm going to read every day before bed. But then the days are long, you're exhausted, and you just say, I ran out of time. So, time is a huge barrier for a lot of people. That's a common one that you can go ahead and kind of have at the forefront of your mind that I might run into a time barrier. Another one is low energy, right? We use all of our energy of the day. Then by the time we're in the bed, you may not feel like reading because you just want to go to sleep. Whatever the barrier that you can think of, time, energy, something else, write it out, or just at least take a moment to acknowledge it. We're just bringing attention to this so that when we end up encountering it on our journey, it won't be so much of a shock. If you want to take it a step further, you could go ahead and think about how you would overcome that barrier. And I'm not saying you have to spend an hour or longer on this. You could spend 5 minutes maybe on that. Like, okay, if I run into a time issue, what am I going to do on the days that something unexpected happens and takes more time? Think through what you would do. And if you're stuck with like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, don't worry, I'll help you out with that in just a moment. So, here are some tips when it comes to reclaiming your health. I know we just briefly talked about having the plan and then thinking of some barriers that could come up that can get in the way of the plan, but just some general tips when it comes to specifically reclaiming your health this year. Um, my One of my top tips is always going to be experiment. One of the struggles we run into when creating a new plan, other than time or energy, is discouragement. We took the time to create a goal. We signed up for the class. We created a great plan. We hired a trainer. We paid for the course, whatever it is. And then we run into a barrier and we don't know how to address it. And we're left feeling discouraged. And that's when all the self-doubt and negativity starts to come in. So, one approach to kind of take the pressure or weight off of everything working out the first, the second, the third time that you're trying it is to remember that one, you are trying to change your life here. So it's okay to not have it all figured out. If you've never been on a weight loss journey or you have been on one before and just have never been successful, you're going to need some experimenting to figure out what exactly you need to do in your life that works for you to help you get to that goal. You're changing your whole life. So take away that pressure to have it all figured out. If it's your first time creating your plan, you're probably going to have to revise the plan. So just know that going into it. And I like to approach new goals with an experimental mindset. I'm going to try this plan and we'll see if it works. And then we can adjust. And a side note here, sometimes we can get off course on the plan, right? We might just have to have a moment of honesty and say, or address if you even followed the plan, right? Sometimes we'll say, oh, I wrote out this plan and it's not working. Well, first question, did you do the plan the way you wrote it out? And no judgment there, whether it's yes or no, but that helps you kind of get clarity on if it was the plan or if it's something else. And if the plan was too challenging for whatever reason, that might be call for, that may be reason to adjust and alter it. Or it could just be an indication that wait, I didn't actually follow through with the plan, so I need to actually try it. It's hard to say if a plan works or not if you don't even try it, like genuinely try. But either way, sometimes you think something is working because you can have success to some degree, but then we burn out or we just get tired. And instead of altering the plan, we face that discouragement and we beat ourselves up. We're like, I wanted to work out 5 times a week. I did it for the first 2 weeks of the year. Now I'm in week 3 and I'm really struggling, or I had an off week and I'm really struggling. And that's okay too. But what are we going to do with that discouragement when we feel it? This is the time to experiment with your plan, because while you were seeing results and were seeing that you were able to do it, sometimes it's not sustainable. Just because you were able to see yourself work out 5 days a week, 1 week or 2 weeks, if it is too challenging, maybe that's just an indication that you need to work up to that point. That could be what it is. Is no, you can't always go from 0 to 10, and that's okay. That is definitely okay. So what we're just doing here is just calling attention to the little bits of planning and goal setting that we like to kind of gloss over. We'll say plans don't work, or I ran out of time, or I ran out of energy, but really you're facing discouragement on top of the barrier of time or energy, or we never gave the plan a real shot, or the plan isn't working. We think sometimes, okay, because I was able to do it, that means it works. But maybe it doesn't work for your lifestyle right now. And that's okay too. So, again, we're just experimenting here. We're getting clarity on what the real issue is, um, and what is not sustainable for us. The next tip that I have is to reflect on the plans and lessons and skills that you have already learned in life, not even related to whatever goal it is that you have set. Because if you just look over lessons that you've learned or skills that you've developed over the years, they'll more than likely be available to you when you want to use them. So when you reach that crossroad point of, I want to quit, or I don't think this is helpful for me, I've altered the plan, I've experimented, I just can't see myself getting there. We're going to need to reflect on what we have been through in our lives, right? So instead of focusing on what didn't work, because again, that's where that discouragement comes in. Instead of focusing on what didn't work, think about what has worked for you before. Let me give you an example. Earlier, I mentioned that a common barrier for people when it comes to setting goals is that they run into a time barrier. So, as a coach, a question I like to ask myself and clients is, if they're saying, like, I really want to do this, but I just ran out of time. So, they feel like time is consistently an issue for them and they just don't have it. That's focusing on the negative of it. I would then say, tell me about a time when you were successfully able to find the time to start something new. Doesn't have to be related to your current goal, just any time that you were successful in implementing something new into your life. That's going to hopefully help you see that, you may not have done this new goal before, but you have dealt with the time issue before in your life. You have done that. That's success right there. Seeing that, wait, I can deal with time barriers before. And how specifically did I deal with that? Did I spend less time doing something else? Did I plan better? It's just start, getting your mind thinking about, one, you are able to deal with the time barrier. So that brings in some positive affirmation for you that you can deal with this barrier. You have dealt with this barrier before. And then you can reflect on what specifically you did to overcome that barrier. I love that question because it really does kind of help us reframe and get out of that negative, discouraging feeling. But once you start to see that you've had successes in other areas of your life, you're going to pull those skills out of your toolkit. So that's what's inside your toolkit. The tools that you have are the skills that you have learned over time in your life. So while you may not know what your ideal workout plan looks like right now, you have the skills to find out what it will look like. And you can pull these skills from life lessons, but even if that's too general. So take what you do for a job or what you did for a job if you're not currently working. Um, Say you were a teacher. You need skills to be a teacher. You have lots of skills. You may have communication skills, planning skills, teaching skills. So you could maybe ask yourself, what would you tell a student if they needed to learn some material, new material? And I'm sure you have an answer for that, but you could say something like, I don't know, I would tell them to read about it, to research it, to figure out what they need to practice, whatever a teacher thinks to say to a student. And then at this point, act like the student. Take the advice that you would take the skills that you have from whatever job, whether it's planning or whatever skills you have, and see if any of those skills that you use in your job can be useful to you right now as you set your goal. You know, you may not have it all figured out, but you do have the tools to figure it out. You may not have all the answers, but you have the skills to figure out the answers. Okay? This is what I mean when I say take a look inside of your toolkit. Look at your skills. You definitely have them. They're all throughout your life, and you can apply them to the new goals that you have set for you today. So I have a challenge for you. It's really easy. Just take a few minutes and think about what skills are in your toolkit. What skills do you have as a person have? You could write it out or just think through it. If you're struggling to think of your skills, maybe it's just been a moment since you've reflected on how skillful you actually are. You could take out a resume, an old resume. It could be the latest one you've used, or it could be the first one you used from your first job. It really doesn't matter. Look at that skills section that used to be an area on resumes. Look at that skills section that you listed, that you have the skills, and remind yourself, oh, yeah, I can do that. And see how you can use some of those skills and apply it to your goal right now. And even I know sometimes people just write skills on a resume that maybe a job description has, but there's more than likely at least one or two things that's on that list that is true about you. So that's a bonus tip there. Everyone has a toolkit, and yours was custom made to support you. All right. I hope this was helpful. Before we go here, though, I did say I have a second announcement, which I'm really excited about. I have this as a way to say thank you for listening and to help me reach more people that are living with chronic illness. I want to be able to help these people living with chronic illness to be able to thrive in their life. So, as a way to say thank you and to spread awareness of these different chronic illnesses we're all living with, you are invited to come on the show. If you yourself are living with a chronic illness and would like to share some of the successes you've had in your life with your condition, not to say that you aren't struggling, but you've had some kind of success, maybe you're not where you were when you were first diagnosed, I want to talk to you. If you want to bring awareness about a chronic illness, we can talk through that too. I'm going to have a link in the description that's going to have all the details about what we would do on the call. And then it's also going to allow you to book a slot for me. So that's the exciting second announcement. You get to be part of the show. I can't wait to meet you all and hear what you have to say. Until next time, bye.